You're listening to the Values and Leadership Podcast, where business leaders share their stories of purposeful impact and success.
Hello, and welcome to the Values and Leadership Podcast, the podcast for innovative leaders who want to apply new ways of doing things in work to leave a remarkable legacy and have a purposeful impact on their stakeholders. I am your host, Ahmed Arif. We invite corporate leaders, advisors, and executives who believe in participative leadership and love to share their positive life and business experiences, their sense of direction, sense of meaning, and how they challenge their thinking in growing their business and the people around them to their next best stage. In this episode, we are discussing definition of success, continuous improvement, people-centered leadership approaches, the 2020 new podcast series titled Your Favorite Mistake with Mark Graban. Mark Graban is an internationally recognized advisor in Europe, Asia, and North America. He's an author, professional speaker, blogger, podcaster, and entrepreneur. He builds upon a deep education in engineering and management with practical experience working with executives and frontline employees in multiple industries to synthesize and practice methods including lean management, continuous improvement, and people-centered leadership approaches. First and foremost, I have one personal question. Why did you change your photo and added the mask on your LinkedIn profile photo?
Hi, Ahmed. Thank you for having me here on your podcast. And I changed my profile picture. Originally, it must have been in April when the guidance related to COVID-19 was that wearing masks was helpful, not just for the mask wearer, but for others, as science has better understood how the coronavirus is carried on droplets, and masks, while imperfect, are certainly very helpful in preventing the inbound and outbound flow of droplets. So, back then there was still a lot of education, and that was taking place, and I was trying to be an advocate for wearing masks. I've thought recently of changing the profile picture. I've mixed feelings on it because one, I still believe, I think the science shows that masks are necessary and helpful. But at the same time, I think people have gotten the message. So as I see people in Zoom meetings, I'm not wearing a mask. So maybe my profile picture could reflect that. But I don't want to send an inadvertent message that says, well, I no longer think masks are important. Part of what I struggle with there.
Mm-hmm. Great. I like you are an advocate of wearing masks and teaching people that this is important. So it's a good cause. And rarely people do that on their LinkedIn profile. So this is something distinguishing for you. So thank you, Mark, for this.
And I want to give credit also real quick to a friend of mine in the lean community, Karen Ross, who was making masks. She does sewing as a hobby. And, before masks were readily available in stores, she was kind enough to send me one in the mail. So that was the original profile picture, was wearing a mask that she had sent me. The current picture with the blue mask is one that I purchased online. But, Karen, I think, was setting a good example in a way. And I was, in my own way, trying to lead by example as well. Great.
Yes, in these times, we need this kind of lead by example. Thank you, Mark, for this. Now, let's jump in on our hot topics. I know you are as well advocate for continuous improvement. This is something that you have been dedicating a lot of your lifetime into that. And I think you are enjoying working in organizations that are looking for better ways to improve with the leaders who are willing even to lead that change. So can you share your journey within KaiNexus?
Yeah, so there are multiple, I think aspects to that. My career has taken some turns over 25 years since I graduated from college, and it's difficult. It's strange to hear those words come out of my mouth. 25 years since I graduated college. To me, continuous improvement is a real passion of mine. In your introduction, I really like how you framed it as participatory management, as being people-centered. Continuous improvement leads to a better workplace. And I learned early in my career when I started at General Motors, just the loss and the waste and the harm that was caused, when people really just hated coming to work. That was generally true in the hourly workforce, the salaried workforce like myself. And I saw even then how engaging people in improvement, respecting them, listening to them, solving problems that matter to them can help turn a workplace around. It can help turn individuals to enjoying coming to work in a way that maybe wasn't true in the past. So it's better for the employees. It's better for the customers when quality improves and on-time delivery improves. It's good for the organization that employs the people because they perform better as a business. And then when I had an opportunity to start working in healthcare 15 years ago, I discovered similar sad dynamics of a lot of people who were working in healthcare who were frustrated, who were burned out, who hated coming to work. And the similar opportunity applies in healthcare when we start engaging people, when leaders are respectful, and it's this combination of engaging people and being a servant leader that can really, again, start turning people around in ways that benefit the healthcare providers. It benefits the patients when quality and patient safety are improved, when waiting times are reduced, and it ends up being good for the healthcare organization, or depending on what country we're in and how our health system is structured, it ends up being good, for whoever's paying for the healthcare privately or from the government. It's good for society. So, I think I've seen workplaces go from being very unhappy workplaces to being happy workplaces. And then, you asked about KaiNexus. I had the opportunity to get involved with KaiNexus almost 10 years ago because KaiNexus, the co-founder is an emergency room physician, Dr. Greg Jacobson. And Greg shares that passion for continuous improvement. So when I met him and learned that he was building a software platform to help support organizations and leaders who are going down this continuous improvement journey, I was really thrilled, and I continue to be involved with KaiNexus today as that company has grown and serves people in many industries now. It started off helping healthcare organizations, but now we have customers all around the world in all sorts of different industries.
Great. So I see as well your role within KaiNexus is evolving, or it's not constant. Why is that happening?
That's a good observation on your part, and it's true. For one, the company has grown, right? So when I got involved almost 10 years ago, it was really the two co-founders, a part-time developer, and then me. And I was able to work, part-time, half-time, basically just earning equity in the company. Like many startups, cash poor, and it's hard, you can't afford to hire people. But I believed in the mission. I believed in the people, Greg and Matt, the co-founders. And so thankfully, I was able to continue doing consulting work and getting speaking engagements that bring in income that then allowed me to spend time working for KaiNexus. And then as KaiNexus got more funding, at one point, I was formally a 50% employee. After about a year, and as we started building out the team, it made more sense for me to just step back and become a contractor again, basically. So the team has grown from 2.5 or 3 people to over 20 people, and I helped. I did some things to help get the company up and running commercially. But then as the company grew, thankfully, we could hire great people who had experience in software sales and software customer support. And, the development team grew. And so now, I consider myself, it's a part-time role, but I'm a full believer in KaiNexus. I've made an additional investment in the company. And, I do strategic marketing initiatives for KaiNexus. In particular, there's a webinar series, manage and facilitate. That's a free webinar series that's open. We have people from all around the world joining us for those series. So I try to help KaiNexus get some exposure because I think it's a great product. It's a great team. It's been really good for the KaiNexus customers. So I'm really happy to help support that as well.
Great. So you mentioned 2 or 3 words, which is the key, I think. You're believing in the mission. That's why you try to accommodate your role, whatever the role is, part-time, 50% employee, contractor, whatever role. But it is this kind of believing in the mission that made you stick and made the company even wanted to have you all the time and allowed for whatever kind of role that you can do.
Yeah. It's the purpose, the people, the product. Yeah, something those are all things I believe in with KaiNexus, and that's important, right? We all want to be connected to an organization where we share that sense of mission and purpose, where we have shared values. I mean, one thing that Greg and Matt, as the co-founders and executives, have really focused on is making sure that KaiNexus is a culture of continuous improvement. I've had opportunities to try to help steer that direction a little bit as an advisor, and I give them credit and for sharing those values, that everybody should be involved and informed and engaged, and you can't have a couple of senior executives making all the decisions. That's true in a factory. That's also true in a hospital, I think.
So you're keeping employees involved, informed as well, and
Right.
They can take decisions.
Right. I mean, I think, leaders have to help set direction and goals. But then, the people doing the work have an important voice in defining, how do we improve? How do we reach those goals? It's this combination. I've been taught that, lean management, or you can frame it as the Toyota production system, is a combination of top down and bottom up. Leaders can't delegate everything to the frontline staff, right? I mean, frontline employees can solve many, many problems that they may find in their daily work. Sometimes they may need coaching and support from leaders, and the leaders still play a very important role. I know leaders from healthcare who, let's say, the pharmacy leader at a hospital in Indiana here in the United States. Rhonda, that pharmacy director, said, and I've been able to help post video of her saying this online, that once she got her employees in the pharmacy fully engaged in continuous improvement, that meant she had more time to be a strategic thinker, right? Instead of reacting, instead of all of her employees coming to her and saying, Rhonda, here's the latest problem. Help me. What's the answer? What's the solution? People learned to improve mostly on their own. They would keep Rhonda and other leaders informed. And then, as Rhonda said in that video, I think it was really powerful, she now had the mental energy and time and capacity to think about the future, which is, I think, a very important role of leadership. Not just reacting to problems today, but helping define where we need the future.
Great. So I like this thing when you mentioned that the lean management of Toyota is like a combination of top down and bottom up, and employees were given voice to have kind of setting the vision or the future of the company. Does this voice gives them the right for defining their salaries or defining where they can work into the organization, or let's say maybe?
Well, I think, do they get to decide their own pay? No. Do they get to decide where they work? I say possibly, because I think in a lean organization, there's a strong focus on helping people build different job skills, additional job skills. There's more of a focus on one level, job rotation. In a lean factory, somebody is very unlikely, or I would maybe even say never, they're never doing the exact same job all day long for a number of reasons. For physical ergonomics and safety, you may want to rotate jobs every 90 minutes or every 2 hours. But then, there may be an argument for, kind of the mental stimulation of doing different things. And, I think when I've seen in lean organizations, as people help improve, let's say, productivity as one measure, to me, a lean organization makes a commitment to their employees that if you help us improve productivity, we're not going to lay you off as a result. right? So a lean organization looks for opportunities to grow, and that often means giving employees opportunities to do different things or to raise their skills, which then may increase their pay. So in a way, maybe they do. If employees take advantage of these personal growth and development opportunities, they can move up into a different job that has a higher pay range. So maybe the answer to your question is a little bit more complicated. Of can they affect their pay? At first, I said no, but it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, maybe through the L&D, maybe the lean management, they are sourcing more money to the employees' learning and development, maybe?
There's that. I mean, a lot of companies have, profit sharing. So, you want to create an environment where, if the company succeeds, everybody shares in that success. I think,
Great.
A sense of purpose and mission and intrinsic motivation is very important. But we're helping people share in the reward of the company's success. Maybe that's another way where they do have an influence on not their hourly pay rate, but they may help influence whatever profit sharing or stock grants that are made to them. So we want to create an environment where the company succeeds and the employees also succeed, both I think emotionally and financially.
Great. This is really nice to have this kind of management or leadership attuned to the employees' emotional needs, as well as growing the employees as well. So it is like a win-win. It's not only the company grows or the employees only share what they have to the company's sake and they are left behind. No, it's like a joint growth.
Joint growth is a good way of putting it, like over time. Lean organizations make a commitment to their employees. Toyota is famous for, even in difficult financial circumstances, like during, the 2009 Great Recession, for example, or even during the pandemic when car and truck sales were very slow, and factories were shut down as people were trying to figure out how to work safely. Toyota doesn't lay people off when they're full-time employees. In 2009, 2010, and there are other examples more recently, shorter production shutdowns. Toyota pays people to come in and get cross-trained for different jobs. Toyota pays people to come in and do continuous improvement. Toyota pays people to come in to do other quality improvement activities. Now, Toyota does have a percentage of their workforce that is temporary. But when somebody is a full-time employee, that commitment is, very serious. And I think that's one manifestation of what Toyota talks about in terms of respect for people or respect for humanity. You don't treat them as disposable. You make a commitment to them, and that sense of kind of, that commitment, that creates a stronger commitment to the company. And so this becomes a very, positive reinforcing cycle, if you will. Great
to know that. And while I was making search for before this episode, I found that you have a really interesting concern about something you call it habitually excellent organizations. So does the habitually excellent organization is a different thing than what we have discussed now of the lean management, or can you please share about that?
Yeah, I think that all goes together. And thank you for asking that question, because that phrase habitual excellence is a phrase that comes from, somebody I think was a great leader, a great man, Paul O'Neill. He passed away in April of this year. So there's still a lot of people, grieving that loss. He was, among other things in his career, he was the CEO at Alcoa, aluminum manufacturer. And when he became CEO, long story short, he really, as the CEO, he emphasized with the employees, and he talked publicly about this, that they were going to become the safest workplace in the world. That employee safety was, the primary goal. And think, well, wait a minute, most CEOs don't talk about safety. I think that's very true today.
does his concern came because there was an incident before, or just he just came about it from himself?
I mean, it was a philosophy.
Mm,
He had been in leadership roles in other companies, and Alcoa was not. It wasn't a particular incident. You could look at the data and say that their safety wasn't poor, but Mr. O'Neill had this philosophy that nobody should be hurt
mm,
when they come to work. And over time, that philosophy evolved to say, if anything, people should be healthier when they
mm,
go home at the end of the day than they
mhm,
were when they walked in the door. But Mr. O'Neill really emphasized safety. He learned a lot from Toyota, and they created something called the Alcoa production system. So there are
mhm,
connections to lean manufacturing or Toyota. And I think the idea from Mr. O'Neill was that to engage the employees, to be servant leaders, to do the things that are required to improve safety, will
mm,
lead to excellence in other dimensions, right? So he wasn't saying safety was the only thing that mattered. But what he
mm,
believed and what he proved out is by focusing on safety that engages people, because who can disagree with improving safety?
mhm,
Everybody has an interest in that. When you develop the skills around problem solving and leadership and improvement, guess what? Productivity improves, quality improves,
mm, mm,
on-time delivery performance improves, and the Alcoa stock price went up dramatically. So
mm,
safety incidents and lost workday cases came down dramatically. The stock price went up. And
mhm,
so that's what he refers to as habitual excellence. It's the habits and the behaviors that are born from mindsets and values and principles that lead to an organization. As he would also articulate, that an organization should strive to be the best in the world at everything they do, whether that's
mm,
making the aluminum or doing the accounting work behind the scenes. That everybody
mm,
should strive to be the best that we can be. And so one other thing he talked about was the theoretical limits of performance.
mm,
We don't want to set a safety lost workdays goal that's better than average for our industry. He would say that goal should be zero. That's the theoretical limit of performance. On-time delivery, theoretical limit would be 100% on-time delivery. And so
mm,
there's this idea that, to me reminds me of Toyota and striving for perfection, as Toyota often describes it. There's similar philosophy here. We might not reach perfection, but if we don't strive for perfection, we'll make less progress than we would when we actually do aim for those theoretical limits of performance. So, Mr. O'Neill, I had a chance to meet him a couple of times because he became very involved in healthcare improvement, and he was he was the I think they said non-executive chairman of a firm called Value Capture that I often do subcontracting work. I admire Mr. O'Neill, so much, and there again, it comes back to that, shared sense of mission and purpose. And I've learned a lot from him. I try to pass along what he taught in different ways. We have a podcast called Habitual Excellence, and we've published a book that's a collection of some of Mr. O'Neill's speeches, so you can hear directly. You
mhm.
can find video of him on YouTube. I find it, it was very inspiring. It'll probably continue to inspire me the rest of my career.
Great, great, great. When you are surrounded with great people like Mr. O'Neill, definitely your perception will change and your motives will change in work. Definitely, I think you are lucky. You feel gratitude that you have met
Yes.
him. So, and this is
Um,
very, yeah.
I'm a better person, or at least I strive to be, for having met him. And that book, I also want to mention for your listeners, it's available as a free PDF ebook
Mm,
that you
mhm,
can download from the Value Capture website. It's valuecapturellc.com/playbook.
mhm.
Any of your listeners anywhere can download that for free. We're trying to share the message.
Great.
We're not really trying to make money off of a book. We just want to try
Mm,
to expose people to the great things he said, and the stories about what he did
mhm,
as a leader. Right? It's not enough to just talk about these things. He really backed his words up with very important actions as a leader. And again, it's very inspiring.
Yeah, again, you are repeating the concept lead by example. This is very important. Yeah,
yes,
great.
I think he was very much a lead by example type of leader.
Great. Now back to 2020 again. You had started your newest podcast. I think it's called Your Favorite Mistake podcast, where you have guests who are business entrepreneurs or business owners, and they share their favorite mistake. So today, I think we will switch the roles. You will be the guest. I will be the podcaster, and I'll ask you your favorite question. What's your favorite mistake, Mark, in your career?
So yeah, I've given this thought in different ways over time. So I started the podcast. It's called My Favorite Mistake. It's where each guest talks from their perspective. What's my favorite mistake? I think one of the other themes in the podcast is learning from mistakes. And so people share stories of a mistake that was big enough to stay with them in their mind, and a mistake that was important enough for them to learn from, right? Mm-hmm. So it's different than asking somebody, what's your biggest mistake? That might just be a sad story. So one example to answer your question, one mistake that I would consider a favorite mistake, because I think I've learned from it. It's a story that I've shared in one of my books, Practicing Lean. And the one story there was back when I worked in manufacturing, being in a role of like the internal improvement expert. I'm an industrial engineer with experience in the lean methodology, and the organization that I worked in very much had a culture of experts coming in to solve problems for people. It was not that participatory management culture. And so I was given a task to go do a project to go help make improvements in one part of the factory. And so one of the things that I saw as an opportunity, because this production area was very often running out of small component parts, different part of the department would make. They weren't, it seemed like they weren't managing the inventory very well. They would have too much of one component, not enough of another. The changeover times on some of these presses were very long, and so there was a lot of downtime, which led to the need for more inventory. Made it hard to catch up when they didn't have inventory. So I came in as an engineer, and I talked to the people who worked in the area, but I didn't involve them enough. That was my mistake. And so it was partly, I think the culture and the expectations of the organization that I was a part of. They probably wouldn't want me to spend thinking back on it. If I was more fully engaging the employees, I might have gotten in trouble for stop interrupting the workers, stop bothering the workers. They need to do work. Your job is to improve. And so I designed, for example, a Kanban system, a reorder point Kanban system that was technically correct. It never got used. It never got used. And I felt bad about that. And, it was an opportunity to reflect and step back and say, well, I think some of the lessons learned from that mistake is that you've got to figure out how to engage the employees. And thinking back on it a little bit further, it was probably a mistake of mine. Now I hear myself blaming the culture that I was working within. I probably could have done more to say, wait a minute, we need to more fully engage the people doing the work so that they understand the problem and that they agree with how the problem is framed, to get their input into the solutions that I was proposing, and working together with people to where they would have a sense of commitment to figure out how do we make this work, instead of being willing to say, well, let's prove Mark was wrong and not really give it a full effort. So again, I don't blame them for that. That was the fault of not being fully engaged. And so again, I would call that a favorite mistake, because that's something I do think back on and I reflect on. And given the opportunity now, I have an opportunity to, when I work as a consultant for different organizations, to to really insist, let's not repeat those mistakes that I had made before.
Great. And I like when you said you are blaming the culture, not specific people, but sometimes the culture is strong that sometimes we have to manage what we really have to do because it is the culture. And sometimes the culture is more difficult, is more powerful than our individual contribution.
It is, but I think the one thought that's sparked by you asking me to reflect on it is, I was probably correct about the culture, but should I have tried anyway? The culture doesn't value engaging the employees, so I shouldn't try. Another way to frame it is the culture, the organization, the leaders don't value engaging the employees, but I do. So what's stopping me from doing that, right? Instead of assuming that I would have gotten in trouble, maybe I could have helped demonstrate, look, these are the better results that we get. Well, how did you have such a success here? Well, because I engaged the employees. Been a more effective way of leading by example instead of complaining about the culture.
Reframing each one's mind can lead to a different result. And this is your takeaway point, which is I like it. It's a really great point.
Yeah, well, thanks. And, it's a high, I have the benefit of this being 15 years in the past where I can try to think back. My memory of it is probably imperfect, but, it was an important enough moment that the details stick with me. And now with 15 years of additional experiences and reflection, a different person than I was 15 years ago. I was, younger and more impatient, and it was just different. So if I could go back in time, and which I can't, go back in time, all I could do is do better when I have other situations here today. And I try to share some of those stories sometimes to maybe try to help inspire others, or to help reinforce that engaging people in improvement is not just the right thing to do, it's more effective.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for sharing this inspiring stories and trying to, as you said, to teach others or to pass the knowledge to others so that they can have a different future and a better future. And this is what you're aiming for in the end.
Yeah, that's well said.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today. It was a really pleasure to have you. I think this is your first podcast in our part of the world. So I'm very happy I'm very grateful that you accepted the invitation today. And in the future, maybe we cross paths again, for sure.
Yeah, when we're able to start traveling again, and hopefully we'll have that opportunity. But Ahmed, I really want to thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be invited to be on a podcast, and really appreciate the good questions you asked and the opportunity to talk today.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for your time. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Dear listeners, in the next episode of the Values and Leadership podcast, we will share the secrets of success from another successful leader in business. Tune in to learn more about participative leadership and purposeful impacts in business.